the elder? Were you born first?
No, I was born 5 minutes later.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And he always resented you for that, for coming along. He was an only child.
5 minutes, yeah. He claimed that he was the elder. We were both, of course, both Jewish, which meant, in fact, that according to the Talmud, the one born who came out second was, in fact, the first. I never understood this, but I used it quite continuous.
Second is for...
Yes, yes, the one who came out of the womb.
Oh, he was sort of preparing the way for you. That's John the Baptist. Messiah. But you had a good relationship. I mean, I mean, two writers, were you ever in competition with each other?
No. Terry didn't become a playwright until, about 10 years after I. It was that long, I think, and then he did.
Tell about, how did Five Finger Exercise, I remember seeing the only thing I was disappointed in Five Finger Exercise, I was seeing this play, and it took place in a drawing room, and I was ready for things to explode. And I said, oh, this is what we have to do, because it was a hot new play that everybody loved, Five Finger Exercise. And I wanted that betrayal, I wanted the betrayal in the play, I wanted everybody to destroy, have the house fall down. But it all remained very still. And it wasn't until I think and then you had the remarkable One Act Private Eye and Public Ear and White Lies and Black Comedy. It was Black Comedy that I suddenly thought you moved into an entirely new world with no preparation for me, for the audience.
Well, there was a preparation. It was called The Royal Hunt of the Sun.
I'm getting the order, which came?
Yeah, but that came first.
Royal Hunt of the Sun. See, I'm ill-prepared. When Royal Hunt of the Sun came, I was overwhelmed by that. I couldn't believe that the same man who had written Five Finger Exercise, this polite play, that I didn't want to stay in that room, could suddenly be morally superior and say, I'm not going to write that play. Suddenly you screw me up by presenting Climbing the Andes.
Yes,
and it was so, the gauntlet that you threw down in that play, how did you make the leap from a realistic Terence Rattigan land
yes.
to this epic and make it believable in the simplest of terms?
Well, don't get me wrong when I say that I didn't really like the well-made play. I did like it. But, and I wrote, I mean, the Private Ear and the Public Eye were both one actors,
yes.
but they were both so-called well-made plays.
Yes.
And I never quite understood why well-made became a term of abuse, which it did. It's well-made. I was always, to this day, I still believe that the only play that they can look at is one that's well-made, according to its own laws.
But that's the key thing, its own laws.
But I got bored with the well-made play. The two and the ones I wrote for Maggie Smith, which were the two Private Ear and Public Eye, and Five Finger Exercise. It was not done in a drawing room. It was done in all the rooms of a cottage,
yes.
actually. But it moved about. But I was ill. I was invalided out of the coal mine and had a bleeding ulcer, which is really rather painful. And I was given very stupid medical advice because I was made to stay in bed, not moving for something like 6 months. It was perfectly absurd, and you had to drink a lot of milk, which was again absurd, and the whole thing was a disaster. But in point of fact, I did have a lot of time sort of tethered to the bed, and I wanted to read something vast and Victorian, I think, and I found an extraordinary book. There were two books. One was called The Conquest of Mexico.
Prescott.
Of Prescott. And the other one he wrote called The Conquest of Peru. And I opted for the Conquest of Peru. And I was thinking, what an extraordinary play, the story of the conquest of the Inca himself. Because if you've got the Inca, if you capture him, you capture Peru, if you see what I mean. And Atahualpa, and the whole story of the conquest, the ransom of Atahualpa, and the despicable execution of the Inca by the Spaniards. The whole story is vile in terms of the behavior.
But what was the event that made you say, this is what I want to dramatize?
The sense of it didn't have an event, it was that, reading that and thinking, if only theatre was like this. And then I went, I'm speaking as if this immediately happened, it didn't. I then went to Cambridge University. I'd got a scholarship which I had to suspend at that time until the service was over, until the war was over. I could have been a coal miner for ages. Fortunately, two things happened. One, the war ended, and two, I got this bleeding ulcer, which prevented me from continuing as a miner. And instead, I went to Cambridge and picked up my scholarship, which I had before got.
And got your degree?
Yes.
In what?
History. History.
What did you specialize? What area?
Well, many. One was American history, actually. I was always fascinated by America, which was quite novel in those days, because they didn't actually have, in a rather parochial way, you can believe it, Cambridge didn't have American history, didn't teach it.
Well, doesn't you quote somewhere that you quote Freud saying America was a mistake?
Yes, he did.
He
He said that. Yeah. It's a line in the play, I can't remember which play.
Gift of the Gorgon.
It's the Gift of the Gorgon.
Yes.
Yes. Very Freud, very strange remark, but it's true. Freud said America is
And did you travel to Peru? Did you make a trip to?
No, I couldn't afford it. I mean, it was in those days very difficult to get from London to Peru to Machu Picchu or Cajamarca or wherever the places were. And I wanted to trace the whole journey of Pizarro from his landing on the Ecuadorian coast and the ascent of the
Andes.
Well, the Andes range, yes, in full armor.
But
can you
how?
imagine doing that? I mean,
Well, it's oddly enough, I can imagine that more easily than saying, how am I going to put that on stage? I mean, you just can't write into the Tsar and his army and they scale the Andes.
exactly what I did.
You trusted me. You said somebody will know how to do this.
I met a man called John Dexter,
Great job.
the great John Dexter, the difficult John.
Yes.
And John was a small, pugilistic looking figure from Derbyshire. And he was a great director. And great in a very special sense, that he adored spectacle and he adored theatrical event, but had no time whatever for decoration of any kind. There was a kind of austerity